And everybody out there in the internet, thank you for tuning in. And for the participants in the class, what's up? My name is Pure, and I'm going to go over what we'll be going over, and then we'll be getting right into it. For the participants in the class, at the end of each section, I'll probably have around 6 sections. Well, you can definitely ask me some questions there, so since they'll be relevant, and we can keep moving forward. So if that works with you, I'm going to begin. But participants, you can hear me and you guys are good to go?
Yep. Good to go?
Yep.
Nice. Okay, so what we're going to be going over is main calling. And the reason I say it without pissing people off is because you can easily piss people off when you're trying to tell them what to do. So the trick is to find a balance where you're being authoritative but still, not pissing them off, not rubbing them the wrong way, understanding how to talk to them. So we're going to be talking about some of the things you need before you can start main calling, just some requirements. We're going to talk about team setup and roles and how that plays into main calling. After that, we'll talk about how to get a team, and I think that's relevant. I know Marxist is doing a class on how to make a team or how to form a team, but communication and how to deal with each other, your team setup and how your team operates is really important when it comes to that. Beyond there, we'll be talking about management and leading, and then what is really my most fun thing to talk about is a calling hierarchy. Beyond that, we'll talk about the most important types of main calling and then the things to remember. And I'm sorry if there's a lot of things being thrown at you, but we'll try to do it nice and slow. So before we begin, do any of the participants want to ask anything, or do they have any random questions that they think are important right now, or should we just start getting going? I like the sound of that. Okay, so to begin, some of the things you need to do or need to have before you start main calling. The first is experience. You really can't just come from the pubs, play a few lobbies, and then start main calling. It's nice that you want to main call. It's nice that you feel comfortable enough to main call, but it's good to know what you're talking about before you start talking. The second thing is the desire to watch demos. Many people really don't like watching demos. And when you watch demos, you're able to see from multiple perspectives how people act and react. So if you're looking for a way to really get into main calling, watch your demos. And that also, that's apparent in other video games like CSGO right now. If you look at the best in-game leaders in CSGO, they're typically the players that are always looking at demos. So remember to do that. One thing that not everyone's used to, I guess, is a high-quality mic. There's nothing worse than having a main caller on a team or someone who makes lots of calls, maybe not even the main caller, and they just have a dreadful mic. You know that feeling where someone's saying something important, but it sounds like a garbled Philly cheesesteak order, and you just don't know what the heck's going on. So if you want to be a part of a team and you want to be one of the callers, make sure to go out there, buy a good mic, and have, make sure it sounds good. The next thing is a consistent schedule. With a consistent schedule, when you're a main caller, if you're not around for your team, there's a large chance that they're going to have no idea what to do. So if you want to be the caller for your team, you need to be available. So you need to have a set schedule when you're there, or when people can play on their own, or when you're actually going to be playing with a team. So make sure you're consistent in your schedule, and if you're not really going to be consistent, you really shouldn't try to main call. This is more of a kappa statement, but you have to make sure you have a computer that can run TF2. So a lot of people have garbage computers, and if you want to compete on a team, if you want it to be easy on you, easy on your teammates, make sure that you have a good computer. And then the last, I guess it's another kappa statement, is having a team. And we'll get into that a little bit, but if you're interested in learning more about forming a team, Marxist had apparently a great discussion on it. I think it went down. Hopefully it went down. Maybe I'm just talking out my butt. But anyway, moving forward. Well, actually, before we move forward, for Crasian, everyone in the participant channel, ask me a question about the breakdown of what things are required. I know it's pretty straightforward, but was there anything that was kind of confusing, or maybe something's more important than the other?
Not really, no. What classes of combo are most common to main call?
That's a really good question, and that's actually where we're getting into right now. So I'll just jump right in there. And the question was, and I think it was from Frontline Bait. The question was,
No, no,
what?
somebody else.
Oh, my bad. That
Minky.
was who was that?
Minky.
Okay, sorry, Minky. That was from Minky, and the question was, which classes are the best for main calling? And that's a question that's thrown around the forums all the time. That's a question that I get a lot of time when people ask me that. And there's a couple answers to that. But before we get into that direct question, you have to break down the normal cookie cutter setup. And so for the people out there who really don't know what the typical setup is, you're going to have 2 scouts, one roaming soldier, 1 demo man, and 1 pocket soldier, rounded out with your medic, the person that heals everybody. So most people tend to think that the pocket soldier should be doing the main calling, because usually he's around the combo and he's trying to get information. What I'll do here, Menki, is I'm going to explain how I think about the team, and then I'll have you answer for yourself. I'll have you answer your own question. So the way I see scouts roll when it comes to main calling is that they're their information relay. So as a scout, you can be all over the map really quickly. It says the highest mobility, you can double jump, meaning you can get up on high ground quickly. I'm a soldier right now, but you can double jump to get high ground, to see around the map. You can get in and out of fights, in and out of situations really quickly. And so when it comes to scouts, they should be gathering information and then passing it on to the main caller, or just reiterating it. So that's really what the scouts should be doing. When it comes to the roamer can also do information. The roamer is basically going to be distracting or giving information. So if a roamer comes to middle, jumps to the right side, and sees maybe some soldiers on the left, or a double soldier on the left, maybe the scout over here, he's going to communicate both soldiers far left. Because the roamer really isn't around the combo. Combo will usually be here on a map-like process. So the roamer's like over here, maybe spamming the pack so they can't get on the pack. But he's usually at an angle where he can see stuff that the combo really can't, since the combo's trying to stay in a safe spot to protect their medic. So they're in a safe spot, but they really can't see much. Now the demo man is more of is the damage dealer and the defensive character. So the damage dealer is going to communicate how much damage he's doing, and sometimes that can win a fight. So the demo man has to get used to saying, "Oh, I missed my shots," or "they're destroyed," whatever word you want to throw in there. And the other thing that demo can do is defense. So when people are pushing up, the sticky bombs can be put here and there, sticky bombs wherever you want to put them, and he's just playing defense. He's trying to buy time for his team to get back to the fight from the respawn. So usually the demo man isn't relaying information. Usually he's just telling where the damage is and telling that he's shutting down the left side. I got stickies on left. I got stickies up top. And then people will play appropriately. And I reviewed a demo a while back, so I don't know if you can see chat, but that's a chat bind I haven't gotten rid of yet. And then the last 2 are pocket soldier and medic. A lot of people like main calling as medic, because usually you're in the back, right? You're all the way back here, just sitting in the back. You're not the roaming soldier on the far right, fighting a scout or something like that. You're not a scout up here trying to deny soldiers. You're all the way back here. You get to see a really good picture of the map. But medic's not really always the best to be the main caller. You don't know what's going on. While you're back over there, a soldier could be doing heavy damage here, but you have no idea what's going on. So how do you make a call based on that? Pocket soldier usually ends up being the person who shares the brunt of the responsibility. And so my answer would kind of be like pocket soldier or maybe a demo man. But Mankey, in your experience, who is the main caller? But who do you think it should really be?
Well, I main medic, and I usually main call for when I play sixes. At least that's what happened for the past 2 seasons. I have been main calling as a medic, and I think since he isn't so force, he isn't a combat class. So rather than healing, it's much more better to give calls and actually do some stuff, rather than just healing people.
Are there any times where you feel like you don't have the power to main call?
Well, when I don't have sightlines, like usually the pocket, like for example in process choke, there's usually gonna be pocket or a demo first in choke, and I'll be far behind them, and I won't see it that much, but I'll probably get intel and comms, and then I can use them to make calls.
Understood. Well, what I would say is that the medic should definitely be included in the calling, but I wouldn't have the medic as the main caller. For any new players or any new teams out there, long story short, you should play with your pocket soldier as the main caller. And the reason is, at the minimum, he's going to be communicating where the combo is and where the post-Uber fight is going to be. And we'll get into that type of stuff a little bit later. So the trick is, when you have a setup, you need a balance of individual skill and game thought. And as a main caller, you have to have enough skill that you can hang, have enough skill that you can play in that division. But at the same time, you need to understand what's going on and how it relates to everybody around you. So as a main caller, you need to have a balance of skill and thought in the game. So there's lots of players who are just really, really good aimers, but they really have no idea what's going on. You throw them in a situation to aim and they'll do well, but if they have to think on their own, they might falter and never really be in a situation to maximize their aiming, right? Or their aiming potential. So server's changing level, okay. Another good example is that if you're ever playing like a TF2 center or a TF2 lobby, I find that if I'm not in the lobby mumble, or if I'm not in any type of a communication setting, then I'm going to play much better. And the reason that is I'm going to be able to focus on my own play, focus on me connecting my own shots, and it'll never really be a situation where calls catch me off guard or someone lies to me and something bad happens. So you have to think about how much skill you bring to the table and how you feel your game sense is. Just dropping my sensitivity here. Now, the next section is about team building. And like I've said a couple times, Marcus is teaching a class on team building. But team building is pretty important when it comes to main calling. Because when you're building your team, you're going to go through these stages that will test your team. And during the moments of being tested, people can get cut. You might pick up new talent. People might not like each other. I mean, for the people that have been in competitive TF2, they know that, you don't always get along. I mean, any of you guys, Bumfreeze, or anyone having an experience where, they're doing well in a team, but they just don't get along with somebody?
Oh, yeah.
Here we go, Segno. Give me an example of a situation where maybe your team was doing well, but you just weren't getting along with somebody.
Getting along in like personality, right?
Yeah, exactly. Personality, just being on a team together is just not working out.
I would say I was on this team where we all were completely different people, but we kind of coordinated okay. But the fact that we were so different from each other personality-wise caused a lot of arguments later on in the season about stuff that we liked and stuff. And that tended to get into our gameplay a little bit.
Would you say that hurt the team?
Yeah.
Is the team still alive?
No.
Oh, team dead. So there was a really good example you brought up, and I'll tell you why in a sec. There are 4 stages when it comes to team building, and this is real life, this is video games, this is everything, guys. The first stage is called forming. And this is when you form a team. And this is a stage where basically, a lot of people call it the honeymoon stage. Picture like a top TF2 team where, Clockwork's playing with Banny, and now they picked up Shade, and now they have DeWatt now. Ooh, oh, wow. It's called the honeymoon stage. Everyone is very polite to each other. No one really has any idea what's going on, but they know they're on a team with each other. And so usually people are very, they give people a lot of slack. And this is always like the fun time. It's like, we just lost 5-0, but it's okay because we almost had that one round. Versus, oh my god, we lost 5-0, I'm done for the night, I don't really think I want to play. It's a different stage. Now, the most important stage, it's called storming. And it's appropriately named because this is the stage where teams die. This is the stage where players jockey for position. And this is where you really are going to figure out who the main caller is going to be and who's probably not going to be on the team in a couple weeks. And so there's going to be challenges for authority, meaning the guy who is main calling in the first week, maybe he's not going to be main calling in the second week because there's some, backdoor politics going on. So jockeying for position, people being overwhelmed and stressed by what they have to do. Not most, but many teams never get past this stage. This is where they die. And usually you need a leader to step up and understand who needs to be dropped and who just needs to be repositioned in their place. So that's the second stage. It's called storming. And then after storming, you got norming. What's the last one? Norming and...
Informing.
No, norming and performing. There you go.
Sorry.
Oh, no, it was close. It was close. They all rhymed. So, norming and performing. When you reach the level of the stage of norming, that means that you're happy to be playing with each other. You get over conflicts easy. As the people out there who have had boyfriends or girlfriends, they know that when there's no conflict in a relationship, that's actually not a good thing. You're supposed to have conflict in a relationship and then work through it. So when you're norming, that means that you're able to work with each other, you understand each other, and you have the common goals, common interests. And this is always a really good sign, and it's a really positive feeling. Pushing it a little bit deeper, you get into the performing stage. So this is a stage of delegation and achievement. So without getting too deep into the team building, this is why it's relevant to what we're talking about. As a main caller, you need to have a balance. As a main caller, you need to be willing to cut people. As a main caller, you have to figure things out and you need to spend extra time making sure the team can operate. When players are leaving and then going to play Rust or going to play Hearthstone, whatever it's going to be, you still are looking at a demo and you're trying to figure out how to make the team better. Those are the type of commitments you're going to make if you really actually want a good team. So, look at the Froyos, look at the Ascents. They all have their little issues. Everyone likes to poke at them, but at the end of the day, they're still alive and they're still a team. So that's great for them. Now, the forming and storming stage is usually where team roles and where the main caller is decided. And the roles may change back and forth. Like I said, people may get cut, new talent may come in, and you might even relapse into the storming stage once you get past it. So I'm going to try to not get too wordy with this, but the storming stage is what you should always look forward to. And it's where I think they call it trial by fire. You guys know what trial by fire is, right? Yeah. Basically, you're thrown into the ring, you're thrown into the fire, and if you survive, you made it. So when you guys are on a new team in the future, make sure to look forward to this stage and try to stay as positive as you can and try to associate yourself with other positive people on your team, and you'll make it through. Now, let's slow it down for a second. Does anybody have any questions about that? Anything that I need clarified or I need to clarify for you?
What are the criteria you should use to cut people, I guess? Should
That's a good question.
go for over skill more or over personality so your team stays together? Like if you have a really good player but he's really bad personality, should you keep him or not? Even though your team plays better with him.
Good question. Now, I'm going to focus on where you were saying, should I choose the more skilled player or the person with a better personality who's not as skilled? And what you need to do, which we'll talk about in a little bit, is be a manager and a leader. And the main difference between being a manager and a leader is that a leader focuses on the long term. A leader wants everyone to stay positive and focus on the big picture. Whereas a manager is responsible for the short term and making sure everything's okay now. So as a leader, you want the player who has the great personality because you want him to stick around. You know he's going to be consistent. Maybe he'll get better in the future. It'll provide a really good atmosphere for your team. But as a manager, you want performance right away. It's like, oh man, Clockwork wants to play. Oh, guys. I don't know if Clockwork's going to stick around for a long time, but wow, we're going to start winning matches because Clockwork doesn't miss a shot. So to directly answer your question, I would personally pick someone with a better personality than skill because depending on the makeup of your team, it's going to make everyone have a much better time. People are going to feel much more comfortable, and I think people will be able to deal with the losses better. Versus if you have that highly skilled player who's toxic, like Simple from CSGO, who's toxic. So when you actually lose a match barely, you're not focusing on the things on how to get better. You're focusing on the fact that, wow, if we had Wish we had Banny on this team, because then we definitely would have won. Just you know, the toxic type of things. So yeah, I guess that's how I would answer your question. But to wholly answer it about when to cut somebody, what I would recommend is on your team you have a core, meaning you have 3 people who at all times won't get cut from the team. And that's someone who you discuss things with, who you make decisions with, and you share the burden of leading. And on the teams that I've led, that's usually what I have. I have like 3 people who I can basically tell anything to, and they'll give me some insight or tell me when I'm being a little bit too rough, or I'm like being too passive or too soft on somebody. So there's no one right way, man. But if it's hurting the team, cut the person, because the team is more important than one person, you know. So hopefully that answered your question, Cabbage. So moving past, characteristics of a main caller. And some of this is redundant because there's some overlap, but here are the characteristics of a main caller. Authoritative. Now this means you're not afraid of telling people what to do. You're not going to take offense when someone says no to you about doing something. You're just going to tell people what to do, and they're going to do it. The second thing is confident. You need to be confident in what you're saying. So if you're saying, oh, guys, I think that I'm not sure. I think we should push middle. Never say that. Just say, we're pushing middle, get ready. Or get ready, we're pushing middle at 10:04. How you say something confident versus, I guess let's push middle. Like, no, you don't say that. You say, okay, at 10:04, we're pushing middle. Everyone ready? Okay, we're going in. That's actually what it sounds like. Trustworthy. You need to be trustworthy. And this is where I actually run into some issues, because some of my main calling issues for myself is that I like sometimes to lie, make a call that's a lie to influence what someone's going to do. Meaning, I know if I say, oh, this scout took 30 damage on the right, I know that like maybe my scout might pot shot, maybe my scout might go for the kill, but if I say, oh man, I hit this scout for 100, scout's hit for 100, like if I say that, it's going to change the reaction in my scout. So granted, he might go over there and only expect to have to do 40 damage, but I know that he's going to full commit on that. So as a main caller, if I require my scout to push the right side over there and take on that soldier, if I need that, I might fib. I might say, oh, I hit him for 100, and then I know the scout's going to commit, because some people are timid. So that's my own shortcoming when it comes to being trustworthy. But the biggest thing when it comes to being trustworthy for the lower level players, mid-level players out there, you have to be honest when you make mistakes. And you need to be honest when you do really well. Meaning if a call worked out and everyone responded well to it, you have to say, oh wow guys, that was really good response right there. Try to remember that. Or if your call was terrible, and say, oh guys, that was a bad call by me. I didn't think they have Uber. That one was on me, so don't mind it. That's kind of how it goes. So be trustworthy. Short and sweet. This is one thing that I always work on main calling with my mentors that I work with, is your communication needs to be to the point. You don't want to be explaining everything with verbiage and paragraphs and multi-sentences. You need to make a statement that gets the point across. And for the kids out there in high school or college, that's a big lesson that you actually learn from writing. You know, people think that you need to put all these words together with all these incredible sentences, but in reality, good writing is being able to say something with the way you want it to be said with the least amount of words. And that's why it's important to really read a lot of books and learn about different words, because certain words can, you know, carry multiple words with them. So make sure to say things short and sweet. An example of that would be like this. So if I was a scout and I was re-pushing mid, back in the mid, and the combo's backing out, okay? Like there's 2 things on the point and I see the combo over there. This would be the bad call. Okay, I'm pushing middle. Yep. Okay, no, there's I think there's like, there's 2 scouts on the point, and the combo, the combo's on the right. Combo's backing out. You guys, yo, push the point. Yo, let's that's not what you want to do. But you hear people do stuff like that all the time. And so the proper call is this: 2 scouts point. Combo right, 2 scouts point. Okay, I'm pushing. I can't get up this rock, but I'm pushing in 2. Combo backed out. 1 scout's hit. And the reason you say it like that is because you want to give people an opportunity to say something else that's important. And you want people just to focus on your, like, just a few words, not on what you're trying to say. Because if you're making like this whole story and creating this whole dialogue, people need to like hear the whole story and then they're like, okay, so the scout's backing out. I understand. What's a situation, guys, for the participants here, where you think comms are like too short or comms are too long? Does that ever happen for you guys?
Yeah.
Yes.
I've
Most of
definitely
the
had
time it's
instances
way too short.
Crazian, what do you find with that?
way too long, where someone will be transmitting for over 10, 15 seconds straight, and that just kind of garbles the useful information out of it.
It changes it from being important into being like negative or almost not toxic. Toxic's the wrong word, but counterproductive. There we go.
Sound pollution.
Yeah, sound collision, exactly. So, in those situations, guys, how have you dealt with that in the past, or have you just ignored it?
Clear comms.
Do you basically just say, "Hey, clear comms"?
Yeah.
Nice. Okay, that's pretty good. The trick is if you have a person on your team who's doing that, you don't want to tell them in public. You can't say it in the middle of the mumble because you really don't want to make them feel like they're making a mistake. You don't want them to feel like it's all on them. So the trick is when you're trying to fix that with people, you have to tell them in private after the game. So you go into Steam and you say, hey man, we did real well tonight. I just wanted to say it and I didn't want to say it on mumble, but there's some times where you're making a really good call, but you say way too much. Like you say that you do 15 words where you can do it in like 5 words. And what you have to do then, but then you have to give them an example. Because you don't want to make him feel ostracized. You have to say, like, there was this one time you were pushing mid and you said there was 2 scouts, a demo, and they were backing up right, and they were building Uber. Like, for right there, the best thing you can say is there's 2 scouts and the medic's on the far right. Because then it's just easier for us to know what's going on. So always be mindful of your teammates, guys. I assume you guys have been on sports teams and stuff like that. So you guys know that people respond to criticism and people respond to negativity and positivity differently. So be careful. Now, the last thing, which is actually quite funny, is to stay positive at all times. This is the last characteristic of a main caller. And the trick is you got to stay positive. When things are going negative, stay positive. When things are going well, stay positive. When someone does something wrong, try to revamp it. The trick is to turn any negative energy into positive energy. And that's a weird thought, but let me give you an example. So if a situation like, I always bring up Clockwork because he's my friend and he's a really good scout. So Clockwork is a really good example of a guy who turns in negative energy into positive energy. Like, he expects to hit every shot. And if he doesn't hit every shot, he blames it on registration or his mouse not feeling good, which is basically true. You know, sometimes it feels different. So for Clockwork, when he gets pissed off, when he notices his team's not doing as well as him, he might yell at the stream, but he'll rarely ever say it to the team. And what happens is he'll spawn and he'll get pissed off. Clockwork is the type of player that you don't want to piss him off. Because if you piss off Clockwork, he's going to take all that negative energy and he's going to turn it into just a meat shotting your whole team. What's some example, guys, from when someone on your team was being really negative and you were able to turn it around into a positive? Or has that never happened for any of you guys?
It hasn't happened for me.
Never happened?
Well, in officials on Viaduct, then you go down 2 rounds. Well, in Europe you play until 3, right? So if you go down 2 rounds, and then you feel kind of down, and then somehow you win a round, and then you just get going again. But really in the middle of a game to get it going again is really hard. You really need a miracle sometimes. I struggle with staying positive in games where we lose.
What could you do better? Like, how could you train yourself to be more positive rather than focusing on the negative?
Well, I tend to blame my teammates for things a lot because I think I'm right when I say I blame them, and I probably shouldn't say that out loud.
There's nothing wrong with saying it out loud. The wrong thing is lying to yourself and never saying it out loud.
Yeah, but my team likes to do it after the game, and I do like to change stuff up during games. So that's a bit of a conflict point.
I think you said you're a main caller, right?
Well, I main called before, and then this season my demo main called, and I don't know. It's kind of up in the air.
It's up in the air.
And I want to main call again because I think it might work better.
We're going to get into a calling hierarchy in probably let me grab the paper from my desk. Yeah, we're actually getting into the calling hierarchy next, which I think a lot of people are going to like because I have a personal experience which can really help out. But what I was getting into, a good way to train yourself if you're not being positive is after the game, like after you play, take out a piece of paper and write down all the negative things that you were thinking in your head. Like all the things you wanted to say, all the things you may have even said. Write them down on a piece of paper and then look at what you're writing. And the things in there that are completely useless, meaning they're just like ego or, maybe someone was wrong and it was miscommunication, cross off all the things that are not good and then actually circle the things that you can actually turn into like a positive thing for your team, meaning whenever we have an advantage, our scouts both go and die. So circle that and be like, talk to your scouts saying, hey guys, when we have Ubers, I want to try to include you guys in the Ubers or at least be like kind of like next to us. So you don't want to like ostracize them. You don't want to piss them off, but you want to fix the problem. So it's just a little tool that I used to use. So moving on here. But those were the characteristics of main calling. Now, before we get into calling hierarchy, I talked about it a little bit, it's the balance of management and leadership, where leadership is long-term and management is short-term. So you need to have a balance there. You need to think about the short term and make sure you guys are having good results and people are staying happy, but you also have to keep a second eye on where the team's going and what the team needs to get there. So basically, you need to have it, like I think I wrote a note here. Let me see. Right, you need to have a balance so people are accountable for themselves, but they still have room to explore the game for themselves. And that's the most important thing. You get a player that has responsibilities and meets those responsibilities, but you give him enough room to do whatever he wants. So a good example of that is YZ50. And do you guys know who YZ50 is?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just making sure. For the Wawa, are you there? Do you know who YZ50 is?
Yeah, I've been playing this game for like 4 years.
There you go. YZ50 basically played MGE for like 2,000 hours and then was basically the best scout in the game. There was like Carnage, who was like a DM, like hit every shot scout, and then YZ50 was just this smart pain in the ass scout who hit every shot. And so with EMG, with Tyrone, they literally let YZ50 do whatever the heck he wanted to do. And so YZ50 would just always sneak behind your team. He would get through, he wouldn't shoot you. He'd get behind, he'd hide back here for like 15 seconds, just like this. And then at the right time, he would push in, and with 4 shots, he'd kill 6 things. Obviously, that's not possible, but he would use 4 shots, and he would take down 2 people, and then he would back out. He'd be like, okay, I got 2 people, I'm just going to stay alive. Like, that's what YZ50 was. Seasons later, people started catching on to what he was doing, and then he had to evolve his game, but that's why you give people, room to engage. I guess a question for you guys that I have is, on any of your teams, do you have a player who's like by far the best player on the team?
Last season I did.
Wawa, I guess you don't say his alias, but what class was he?
He was a scout, like he was a just really strong DM player, and he also had probably the best game sense on our team, so he was like helping us get better in open last season.
Nice. So you basically gave him like free reign to do whatever he wanted?
Yeah, we trusted that he was smart enough to like know what was the right decision to make.
Were there ever situations where he clearly made the wrong decision?
A couple times, but they were like pretty few and far between. I can't actually think of any examples.
And how did he handle making a mistake?
Yeah, he didn't really seem to get upset about it. Like, he would only get upset if he missed his shots.
So he moved on. He didn't bring up the negativity. That's good. So that's an important thing, guys. If you're a main caller, remember, people need enough room that they can do what they want and they can explore the game and get comfortable. I keep bringing up CSGO because I played a few months of CSGO in the last few months, and there's this thing about CSGO teams where if you bring a player in, like a really good player, but you put him in a position that really doesn't allow him to use his tools, Like let's say you bring in an Opper, you bring in like a Kenny S, but you're like, hey Kenny S, you know, we're thinking we want to put you on the flank. We want you to be the lurker. There's a high likelihood that Kenny S won't play well because he's not a lurker. So remember with your TF2 compatriots that you give them enough room to do what they want, but at the same time you make them be responsible for certain stuff.
I have a question about this.
Go for it, brother.
So if you have a player who is not very good, I guess, who doesn't really know what to do, but you see potential in him and you want to help him get better, but if you give him responsibility, he will mess up all the time. So how should you handle that? Should you really, keep him on a leash and main call like that?
It's a good question. So basically your question was this new up-and-coming player who is like actually has good skill, he can do his own thing, but then when you actually give him responsibility, he reverts to being not a good player. Is that what it was?
It's good as long as you call him in the right position, I guess.
That's a good question because that's a tough situation. You want him to be able to be comfortable and to be able to get some kills, but there's all these times in TF2 where you need someone following a strategy, or you need someone covering a certain person. So, what I would say, if that person was on my team and I was the main caller, I would go out of my way to watch demos with him. Like, about once a week, I would try to put on a demo with him and then explain a situation. So what's a particular thing that you want him to do? Meaning, do you want him to satellite your medic? What's a typical thing that you would ask him to do that he wouldn't be able to do?
Usually it's about not dying in stupid ways, in wrong times and stuff like that.
Okay, so then you would have to watch the demo on your own and come up with 3 situations where he should not have died. And then with him, you watch the demo with him and then you explain to him, this is what you did and this is what you could have done, which I personally feel in this situation would have been better. But then also remember, you got to show him situations where he does things right. You can't make everything about the negative. You can't be like, oh, this is what you did wrong. This is how you fix it. This is what you did wrong. This is how you fix it. You have to show him, you have to give him some sugar with that salt. So you have to show him some situations where he did a really good job and you're, proud of him for doing a good job, because then he'll focus on the fact that, nice, he gave me some positive feedback. And he also gave me some constructive criticism. So 9 out of 10 people would still be on your team and would probably get better. So hopefully that answered what you were asking. Let me just grab some water real quick. There we go. So now we're on to the fun part. And this is called calling hierarchy. And after I do calling hierarchy, I'm going to have a bunch of you guys join on in game. I'm not sure how many staff members we have. I think we have 3 or 4 staff members, which should be enough. But after I do calling hierarchy, we'll do some stuff. So calling hierarchy, and I don't think this is a real thing. I couldn't find it on the internet prior to me coining the phrase. I didn't know what it was. I know what a hierarchy is, so I basically just came up with it. Certain players see the game clearer than others, and therefore they should be listened to with a higher priority than others. That's just the way I feel. So, like when action's happening, when a fight is happening, it's really hard to hear sometimes, right guys? Like when an Uber's popping, Demo Man's throwing stickies at your face, you got a scout on top of your head. Sometimes it's hard to hear the important calls, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So convoluted calls can basically lose you an entire round, which can make you lose an entire match. So if you create a hierarchy, what your brain is going to do, it's going to subconsciously prioritize who to listen to and who not to listen to. Now that I'm going to say that again, but slower. When you create a calling hierarchy of who should be calling before the other person, your brain will subconsciously start listening to certain people more than other people, which is it's like a brain hack or a brain trick, whatever they call it. So that's just how it goes. And this is the example I'm going to give you guys. ESCA Season 12 Classic Mix-Up. This was a team that I was on, and this was the team that won Insomnia 46 and won Season 12 LAN. It was basically the combination of Classic Mix-Up Season 11 and Mihai's Flow Season 11, rest in peace. And the roster was TLR, Harblu, Enigma, Ruin, Platinum, and Pure. So, like, there are people on that team that can really discuss everything, and there are people on that team that all have really good game sense. And so, almost anyone on that team, if you put them on another team, they can actually call. Almost any of them can main call on another team. Harblu's main called on a team. I think Enigma might be the only one who's never main called before, but even then, he could probably main call if he had to.
So, like, especially at the upper echelons, I've noticed that a lot of teams have pretty much everyone's talking. So, when everyone's talking, and pretty much everyone could be a main caller at that point with how much is being said and what information is being relayed, is that necessary? Is that any kind of clutter? Or how exactly is that working in their favor?
The what? Working in their favor, what? Lots of comms and clutter?
Yeah.
It's... I wanted to get a sound example of Froyotech in their most recent game, and how convoluted their calls were, but apparently it still works for them. But I don't have that. To answer your question, I don't know. They make a lot of calls, and there's a lot of stuff going on, and there definitely is a breaking point where there's too many calls and too much going on. The counterexample that I would say is that the team, the Doctors, and the Doctors is a team a long time from the past, but they were basically a team that went from game to game destroying everybody, and then they would quit it after about 4 months or something like that. Now, if you ever listen to their comms, if you ever had the access to the Doctors' comms, they barely make any calls on voice. Like a call every maybe 3 seconds, and that's all they really say. So the team, like a really, really good team like the Doctors, they barely made any calls. And then you have a team like Froyotech, who is the best team in TF2 right now. Granted, there's only about 3 or 4 teams that I would call invite level. You know, they would probably have a harder time against really good teams. Maybe there would be too many calls. I guess I can answer your question with, when Froyotech plays against Ascent, I'm sure they make a lot more calls, and sometimes they are talking over each other. But moving forward, so what we found on Season 12 Mix-Up was that there were too many people calling, and there was too many things being said. And so what we did was we came up with a hierarchy, meaning the person who has the most important calls down to the person who has the least important calls. So it started with TLR having the most important calls. And the reason we did that was because TLR is in charge of the combo. The way we played on Season 12 Mix-Up was that we really liked giving TLR really big fat Ubers. And because he'd just be able to do a lot of damage. He's like this rocket turret, and he's also quite smart, so he knows what to say. And then beyond, next to TLR, we had Platinum. Platinum was because Platinum's kind of like a leader, and he's the passive strategist for people who really don't know about him. He excels at slowing the game down and playing by numbers. And TLR, you know, is the core of the team. And then after Platinum, there was me. I was third in line. And the reason we had me third in line was because as a medic, you really can't see everything, but you can basically see where your teammates are at. So I always had a good idea of what the damage was, what our health was, and who was in a good position to attack. So the top 3 were TLR, Platinum, and then myself. Beyond there, you had this: Ruin, Harblu, and then Enigma. Enigma was at the bottom, but it's not because he couldn't make calls. It was just at the point that someone had to be at the bottom, and we just had Enigma call what he saw. So literally, Enigma's only job was to be an awesome scout and call everything that he saw. That's how we had him play. Harblu would call out enemy positions all the time, but we really couldn't have him main calling. That was one of the main issues, was that TLR wanted to call, and Harblu also kind of wanted to call. So we had 2 different ideas on how to play the video game, and it never really worked out. So Ruin would call strategy and aggression. Harblu would call out positions. And what we found almost immediately was that we started listening to TLR a lot more, and our combo started being supported. We started listening to Platinum a lot more, and we started being able to include passive play. And then at the perfect times, Ruin would give us the idea of when to go super aggressive. So right off the bat, our communication and style of communication was just great. It really was. So what you guys can do for your team is that I wouldn't go as deep as like creating like a 6-man list. I would have 2 or 3 people who are responsible for making calls, and you should create up a hierarchy because certain people should be listened to more than other people. Do you guys have any questions? Questions on that?
I have
Yeah,
one.
sort of like expanding on that. Is it worth to have like a different person to call the combo and then like a different person to call what the flank should be doing? And then sort of you don't have one person thinking about the whole thing. Is that better or not?
I've never been a fan of telling the flank what to do. I like the flank to kind of figure itself out in terms of coverage and or aggression. But the question you're asking is really good because the way that we did it was that TLR would call all the combo stuff. And then Ruin, who was on the flank, would call the flank stuff. So basically, Ruin would give us an idea of how the flank was if we had an opportunity to push on the flank. And then TLR would be the voice of reason, being like, okay, yeah, you guys want us to push the flank. Well, you wouldn't say it like this because this is a long comm, but yeah, you want us to push the flank, but we're really damaged right now. So Tyler would say, no, cancel, we can't do that. We need to heal up. Back up and heal up. That's what TLR would do. I think it's important not to micromanage people on the flank, but it's also good to have some like direct communication on what's going on there. So hopefully that answered your question. Ilaso?
Yeah, thanks.
Someone else was asking something. I didn't see.
Question.
What's up, Mankey?
With pure anger and salt in team comms.
You said how to deal with anger and insults?
Yes.
Well, if someone's insulting you and they're on your team, that brings your team back into the storming stage where someone might need to get cut, or you need to leave because you can't be a part of the team. Usually, if someone's insulting you, you can't directly listen to it or talk about it. But after the actual game or the session, it's really important to talk about it with the core people in your team. You really can't feed into negativity. If someone's feeling negative and they have to say something out loud, they're not in a good place. They need to be talked with. They need to be like given a warning and or just completely dismissed, because there's no room for negativity, like between player negativity on a team. That's why they call it you're relapsing back into storming, where you should really be in norming or performing. God, that sounds so weird. But what kind of examples could you give me of someone insulting you or saying something negative?
Well, this season in E12, I remember playing a Gully Wash game where a scout, he was never main calling, but he called push 5 or 6 with Uber advantage. But we had player down and I had 6 players and we had Uber advantage. And he says, okay, let's push in. Everybody pushes in, but I know it's a bad thing to do because we don't have a pick, so we can't clean it up and shit. So then she talks me for actually not encouraging it and not going in, because that's just a dumb idea in general. And then it just brings the negative energy into the comms.
Yeah, not good. You're in the storming stage where either you need to leave because you can't handle the atmosphere, or he needs to leave because he's bringing toxicity.
Team disbanded anyway, so...
Well, there you go. That's part of the reason the team disbanded, because you didn't get rid of him quick enough. Not to give any, harshness, but if you're ever in a situation where there is one person who's being a dick, you need to get rid of the dick, or you need to get rid of yourself and move on. You need to put yourself in an environment where you can do well, where you're smiling, and where you're having a good time. You can't be on that team if it's a shitty environment. Obviously, it's hard to find teams, and that's why you probably stuck with the team, but happiness is more important than success in a video game.
Sorry, but what if you're in a position where you're not able to actually replace the player that's being very toxic? I had that problem in my last season in High, where I couldn't really replace a certain toxic player.
Well, that's a big issue. Finding teams, finding good players. there's no one right answer for that, because in a lot of cases you need to stick with the player because you just don't have a replacement.
Yeah.
What I would say is that you should plan to not be on the team. Like, you should basically, like, on a team you need to like follow through with your commitments. So if you're on a team, the understanding is, oh, you're going to play on this team for the season. You know, you're not going to quit in the middle of the season, and you're going to be, you know, blah blah blah. So what I would do in that situation where you can't replace them, you don't bring negativity into it. If you can, you explain to him that sometimes the stuff that he's saying, you say this to him in private. You say, you know, sometimes that when you're being negative like that, it brings people down, and then we really can't get out of it. But long story short, you should plan not to be on that team after the season's over. And you should try to bring one guy with you who you like playing with, and you guys should reevaluate how you want to play as a team and who you want on your team. But you shouldn't be picking people who are skilled, who are assholes, because there's enough talent out there. If you represent something that's positive and fun, that they'll find you and they'll play with you. Most of the kids who are really good skilled and dicks, they never go to LAN. All they do is troll on the internet, and one day they'll probably wake up nice and sad. But your goal is to have a fun time playing video games. That's it, man. Don't overcomplicate it.
All right.
Also, you can build skill over time.
That's another thing, exactly. Sezco is a really good example of like the nicest gamer and a guy who worked his way from being like just a good gamer to like one of the top scouts in TF2. And he's never on a team. Like, I don't think Sezco's had a team in TF2 since like, what, season 13 or something like that? And it's what, season 20 now? So, and he could walk into the game tomorrow and be a top scout.
Related to the toxic player things, what's the best way to get your team off tilt mode? Say they're getting really annoyed or flustered at some stupid stuff that they don't really have control over. What's the best way to refresh their minds?
Good question. Wow, another terrible CSGO reference here. Not that I dislike CSGO, but I keep bringing it up. On Cloud9, everyone knows nothing, nothing but headshots. Cloud9 actually has nothing on that team, not because of his headshots, but because he defuses situations. If you ever listen to their mumble comms, what he typically says is, my dad can beat up your dad. So if someone's like, dude, I was totally there on time. I was like, you just missed your headshot. Like, well, I didn't miss my headshot. I was there like early and you weren't there. And then all of a sudden Jordan's gonna say, my dad can beat up your dad. So you need someone on your team, preferably, to be able to diffuse a situation through like trivializing the problem and moving forward. So if I had to diffuse a situation, I would basically say, hey guys, both of you have valid points, but we really can't communicate it right. We can't do it. We can't talk about this right now because we got to focus on the game. I remember what you guys are talking about, and we'll talk about it after the game. That's how it goes. So it's hard because some people don't know how to deal with negativity and frustration, and so they have to say it out loud because it's the easiest thing to do. But just try to diffuse it through humor, and then say, I understand both of your sides, and we'll talk about it later. And then make sure you talk about it later. But, yeah.
Really cluttering times. What things need to be said during an Uber?
Oof, good question. I'm almost there when it comes to moving and calls, but I will answer this question. So the question is, during an Uber and maybe post-Uber. So there's basically the pre-Uber, where you're communicating where you're moving, and then the Uber, and then you're talking about the post-Uber, where you're going to be setting up. So the question is, I think the question was like, what's important to say during those moments? Is that what you said?
Yeah.
During an Uber, for the players that are not involved with a combo, it's important that they say that they die. So if I'm a roaming soldier, and let's say our combo's like over there fighting the choke, and if I'm a roaming soldier and I come over here trying to get the health pack, and a scout happened to be standing right there, I'm here and I get shot, I'm like, oh shit, and I get killed, and the Uber pops off, I have to say, I'm dead on the flank. And then if I notice they don't really react to the fact that I'm dead on the flank, I'll say it like 4 seconds later. I'm dead on the flank. Because what that means is there's this free scout here who's scouting out, maybe peeking behind. That's what I would do as a person not a part of the combo. If I was a part of the combo, I would say, okay, they're pushing in. We're set up on the right. Okay, pop the Uber. We popped. Okay, they have a better Uber. Spam choke. You want to communicate what you're going to be doing after the Uber. And based on how well the medics do at healing and luck based on RNG with your rocket spam, you really never know what's going to go on. So
Are you saying something?
oh, sorry about that right now. Sometimes I'm forgetting to hit the mouse button. What was the last thing you heard?
So
So like statuses are really important, and I'm gonna get into status updates and moves in a little bit. So I'll talk about that then. But you want to talk about when you die. You want to talk about if you deal damage to someone that makes them really weak, like they have to chase a pack. So you have status updates, which are not in immediate fights, and you have moves, which are in immediate fights.
Your main color.
Sure. The types of calls that I used to make on medic would be the situation of heals, meaning if we had bad heals, meaning I'd probably have to heal 3 targets, and I noticed maybe the enemy was pushing, I would say our heals are bad, which basically is the signal to TLR that he can't push up alone and expect a heal buff. Versus if I'm healing him and I say, okay, heals are good, Tyler. If heals are good, that means that everyone on the team has a buff, and that means I'm likely going to keep the heal beam on him while he tries to push up like this, you know? So that's one of the calls that I would do as medic. The other thing is if you see someone out of position, so if a roamer comes over here and isn't doing like the tag run, like long range spam, if the roamer's like, ooh, I'm going to jump like this. So if the roamer comes over here like this, what my comm would be as a medic, roamer's out of position. And so usually as a scout, the scout's like, wait, where's the roamer in a position? And he'll shoot him like this. The other types of things, what I'll do is I'll notice who is like who's really buffed for that team. If I see a roaming soldier get a full buff and I see him surrounded by other players, he's obviously going to leave that grouping and he's going to move somewhere else. So I can make the call, oh, roamer's about to jump. Or if I see a scout like sneaking through, for some reason, if a scout sneaks through like this, my pocket soldier is actually just starting to walk up like this or something, I'll say like scouts under. So you really don't want to micromanage as medic, but you really do want to give a lot of random little information.
Supplemental calls.
Yeah, really supplemental calls, because what he's doing, he's trying to figure out what he wants to spam. He's trying to support his team as a roamer, whereas you're just trying to make sure everyone's healed and trying to make sure everything's okay. And that's really about it, but let's get some questions. I'm ready to answer some questions.
Can I have a question?
Mm-hmm.
When is it smart to push flank as a combo?
When is it smart to push flank as a combo?
Like example, you push PC as a combo.
Sure, here we go. So the question is, when is it smart as a combo to push the flank?
Yes, like pushing PC as a combo.
So usually your medic's going to be around here, and your demo is going to be right around here, spamming like the edges right here, and maybe if someone overextends, spamming them. That's usually where your combo's at. You got the ammo here, so you can keep spamming. You want to push the flank if you have a number advantage, if they're not covering it all, maybe if they went too far up. Trust me, there's no one right way to do this, but I'm trying to give you all the situations. So, Menki, were you the one asking that?
Yes.
Okay, so Menki, what's so good about a combo? What are the assets that a combo has?
It has damage, it has heals, and it has spammability.
There you go. It has lots of health, lots of damage, and like you said, spammability, which we'll just chalk up as damage. So that's what you have. That's the strength. So the trick is, you want to put that health and that that health and that damage ability in areas where it will matter. So if I'm a roamer on the enemy team and I'm playing right here, and a scout's with me, and we're like this, we're like, oh man, we got this choke covered. They can't take us down. I have 200 health, and I have 125 health over here. If you want to catch them off guard with a combo, all you do, don't walk into a sticky trap, but all you want to do is just push in, walk in, and shoot behind them. Like, shoot right behind them, because if you shoot right behind them, it's going to knock them into this room, and then you're going to be able to clearly roll them over with your health and spam. Another situation that you want to push the flank rather than the choke, if you will, is if you like fake push and you get their comms to say, okay, they're pushing choke. Or if you pretend like you're in sewer, like you actually go to sewer as your pocket soldier and like clear stickies, and then are like showing yourself like this with the heal beam, and they're like, okay, let's push flank. Because right now the call that the enemy made is that, okay, they're at sewer. So the trick is you want their team to think that you're at sewer, but then you start pushing flank. And by the time they realize that you're in flank, you should already have enough position advantage that you can get into the lower like this and just uber like this and push out their medic. Force their medic or something like that. Does that make sense to you, Mankey?
Yes, thank you very much.
Nice. Okay, so any other questions before we round this off, fellas?
Yeah, I've got one for you. Is there anything, like, personality-wise that you've noticed in main callers and the common collected style or the more aggressive, energetic? Is there any real difference between those that you've seen in the past? Or is their effectiveness limited by either one of those?
I've noticed that teams that are at the IM level or lower invite, they call like, people think that they're playing aggressive a lot, but really the only way for them to sync their timings with each other is to say, hey, let's go aggressive, and then they just happen to all be pushing together. So what I noticed is that a lot of the lower level teams that finally are starting to have some success, that they think they're always being like an aggressive team, or maybe enemies are thinking that they're always aggressive. But what I noticed at the top level of invite is that you start seeing a variance. Like, you got aggressive teams and then you have super passive teams. And that's a big reason why Banny's team Froyotech is so much better than his predecessor, or his leader's predecessor, are so much better than his preceding teams. Am I saying that right?
Yeah.
I wanted to say something about Tyrone, but then I didn't want to say something about Tyrone. So, like, the beauty of Froyotech right now is that they have the ability to be passive, that Banny understands, where, okay, let's just sit back and then they'll eventually have to push, versus the aggressive. Now that Banny has Clockwork and Blaze, and he's probably put some time into figuring out how to play aggressive, Froyotech has the ability to play really aggressive, and Froyotech can play very passive. So it's interesting to watch. But to answer your question, I noticed a lot of the good lower level teams appear to be playing aggressive, but in reality, it's just the only way they can sync up their timings with each other. And that's why they always say, hey, let's go aggressive. Let's do the thing where we just play aggro. We only do well when we play aggro. Where in reality, it's just them syncing up together. Because syncing up when you're not like playing wholly aggressive is hard to do. You know, timing roamer and scout pushes with a combo pushing through effectively. Yeah. Any more questions, Duders and Chiquita Benitez? Any out there?
Yeah, when you're in a fight, you'd want to call out focus. But like, who would you call focus on? Would it be better to do it on someone who's got the least health, or the person that's sort of easier to hit for your team?
You're saying in a team fight, when you're trying to focus things, who's best to focus?
Yeah.
The main definer is positioning, regardless of health, regardless of health. Usually, the person you want to focus is the one who's out of position, because if you focus the person who's out of position, you can further put them out of position and/or kill them. And a lot of times, if you're just focusing on the people that are hurt, you can get baited into a position where you're all going for a kill, and then you die. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah.
So if you're trying to figure out how to focus, I would either focus the person that's out of position or the person that's in a position to damage us. So like, if my team, or if I'm actually over, like if I'm over here with my team, if I'm like capping the point and I see a person over there, oop, gotta run out of rockets. So if my team's capping the point over there and we didn't see this roaming soldier coming in the right, the roaming soldier jumps, and at the exact time he says that, he tells his team to push in. If a soldier was on top of us shooting us like this, I would call a focus on him. I would have my demo man just fire stickies right there, and we would back up a little bit. So
Damage they take isn't really that important about who to focus.
just
Or just where they are.
don't get used to going after the people that are weak. That's like a lower level TF2 thing. If the person's weak and you can kill them, yeah, go and kill them. But don't sacrifice position for getting a kill. Positioning trounces it. So, yeah. It's funny though, I haven't played this game in a while. I haven't played competitively in a while, but like, all these things are still real. And lots of teams don't pick them up. And lots of teams don't follow these rules. And that's why you have teams that constantly die. That's why certain teams like Ascent stay at the top for a long time. Ascent is a really good example of a good team, like really well managed, and they're still alive as far as I know. So we'll see.
Okay, cool, thanks.
Yes, but thank you. Sorry for the volunteers for not being able to jump in, but thank you for standing by. Participants, I appreciate the questions, and hopefully you guys learned a couple things. And for the people out there in the interwebs, I know you guys are there doing your meme lords. Thank you for stopping by, and hopefully you guys appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Brad.
Thanks, Brad.
Thanks very much.
Everybody
What a
thank
man.
Brad. Big thanks. Much thanks.
Thanks, Brad.
Thanks.
Thanks, Brad. Thanks so much.
Now I know how to cook.
You're
Thanks.
the
Now I know how to cook, indeed.
Nice. Thanks, guys.
Hello?
Hello?
Is this it?
That's it, dudes. That was it. My voice needs a break.
Alright, thank you once more.
That was a lot of fun.
Feces, thanks for the help, by the way. I appreciate it.
No problem.
Thanks for the time, dude. Bye.
Thanks for that. Gotta go.
Bye-bye, guys.
I don't know how to whisper, Kevin, but I can hear you.
You can set it up in your under configure and mumble.
I'm not going to
too.
set anything up, Feces. I'm not doing any of that. I'm going to walk my dog, make some dinner, do my thing.
Watch Saved by the Bell. Is that your plan?
Of course.
Awesome.
Feces, I'll point out you're still.
But thanks for the help, Feces, and thanks for the questions, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed it.
Yeah, no problem.
Thanks a lot, Brad.
Later, gamers.
See ya.
Peace.